Hey, welcome guys, it's Suresh here, and in this video we're going to be comparing the PlayStation 5 with the Xbox Series X. And let's get started. Starting out with the Xbox Series X, it has a CPU of 8 cores with 3.8 GHz of clock speed and a GPU of 12 teraflops at 1.825 GHz. And the process is 7 nanometer. The memory which the Xbox Series X uses is 16 GB of GDDR6 memory, and the internal storage is a custom 1 TB NVMe SSD. So the expandable storage options for the Series X is 1 TB of expansion card, which matches the internal storage exactly, and the external storage is USB 3.2 external hard disk drive support. And it has a 4K UHD Blu-ray drive with a target performance at 4K at 60 FPS with a up to 120 FPS. And the specs of the PlayStation 5 are a AMD Zen 2 based CPU with 8 cores at 3.5 GHz and a GPU of 10.28 teraflops. The memory interface is 16 GB of GDDR6 memory, and the internal storage is a custom 825 GB SSD with a through output of 5.5 GB raw. And the expandable storage is a NVMe SSD slot present in the PlayStation 5, and you can also use a USB hard disk drive which supports for only PlayStation 4 titles. And it also has a 4K UHD optical drive, and its target performance is also 4K at 60 FPS and up to 120 FPS. So in terms of raw specs, the Xbox Series X seems to have the lead here because of the higher teraflops and the higher CPU frequency which it can max out on, and it is not variable. So the PlayStation side, they might have done it because they wanted to keep the system running a little bit more cooler, but that's not confirmed and that's not sure yet at the time of filming this video. So in terms of performance, and yeah, the Xbox Series X is the clear winner there. And one more thing, the biggest reason why people generally go out and buy a console in the first place is not because of the performance it can give, because it's up to the developer to lock it at a certain FPS and the player cannot change it. Well, with the Series X and the PlayStation 5, or from the PlayStation 4 Pro or the Xbox One X, players were allowed to change it, but it wasn't like they were able to customize it at the level of a PC. So I would say that more than performance, what matters for a console player the most is the games, because at the end of the day you buy a console in order to play and enjoy the games you want to play. So yeah, I think in that terms the PlayStation 5 is a little bit ahead, although I would say that Xbox is catching up. But as of 2020, the PlayStation 5 is on the lead in terms of games and the gaming experience overall. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, then hit the subscribe button down there. I would massively appreciate that. The PlayStation in terms of exclusives wins really easily because the PlayStation 4 generation had most of the best games that you can enjoy and the most graphically intense game that you have ever seen in that certain generation. So I would say that all those games, all the sequels for those games are actually now coming for the PlayStation 5, and Sony has officially announced that they are coming by the end of this year or the starting of next year or the year after that. But on the Xbox side, they have also stepped up their game a little bit more because they like 2 or 3 months ago, they acquired the Bethesda studios now. So after that, all the games that Bethesda has now shifted over to Xbox, and Xbox is legally allowed to do whatever they want with those games, or they can even announce a sequel for those games just for the Xbox. and that would make them Xbox exclusives, and also they would also come for the PC. So the PlayStation players might have to switch for the Xbox. So it always depends on you, what you are interested in, what type of games you play. If you are a big single player fan or a single player, then you should probably go for the PlayStation 5 because it has a big library of single player games compared to the Xbox, because most multiplayer games usually come on all the consoles and PCs anyways. So if you're a multiplayer, then you should probably look for the Series X because it gives you a higher number of FPS and you can be a little bit more competitive on the Xbox side, but you cannot be on the PlayStation. So if single player games, go for the PlayStation 5. If multiplayer games, go for the Xbox Series X. And also, by the way, the Xbox Series X also has something called Xbox Game Pass, which gives you which is $10 a month, I think, and it provides you a library of Xbox exclusives and also some of third-party games on there. It's like 100 to 150 games approximately. I would say it somewhere here later, but yeah, that is a steal of a deal, and you would be really happy. And with that, you can also play all of your games on the Xbox, on the smartphone, on your smartphone, and also on the PC all at the same time. But the drawback for that is that it's cloud-based, so you can't actually store any of those games in your system, or if you don't pay a monthly fee, your games will be gone. Not the save data, but the games, you can't play those games anymore, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. One of the most important things a person looks while buying a console is the design. So they both have gone their own separate ways this time around, not like earlier generations where they were basically a box. The PlayStation 5 basically went for a more futuristic version, whereas the Xbox side, they went for a box. I prefer the design of the PlayStation 5 because it can be laid flat with no problem, whereas for the Xbox, it's a little bit harder as it is wider compared to the PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 5 is a longer console and it's not as wide, but it's long, and it looks weird when you keep it vertically, basically. And it's actually really massive. If you don't have a space to keep it horizontally, then you might actually have a problem. But you know, both these consoles are really weird, and it all depends on what you have in your house. The biggest drawback, in my opinion, for the PlayStation 5 compared to the Xbox is that it has a 825GB SSD. And that's just raw storage, and if you include the system storage, which a system takes, and that's like 200GB, then you're left with something like a 600 or 625 to up to a 500GB console, which is kind of a rip-off in my opinion compared to the Series X, where you get a 1 TB storage device. So yeah, but you know, you have expansion availability for both console. In Xbox, you can buy a separate storage from Seagate, which costs $210 to $220. Third-party options may be available for it, but as of now, it is not. So yeah, it is expensive. But on the PlayStation 5 side, you can just buy a NVMe SSD and use it both on your PC and on your PS5 without any problem at all. Lastly, talking about the controller, the PlayStation 5 has a all-new DualSense controller, and the Xbox side, they went for a more traditional method. If it ain't broke, then don't fix it. And that's completely fine, because the Xbox controller is actually a better controller in my opinion, not just because it's bigger, but because of the off-axis controller, off-axis thumbsticks that it has. I would generally say that it is better to play FPS or competitive games on that setup compared to the PlayStation 5 any day. The only complaint for the Xbox controller is that you still need to put batteries in them. Like, I'm generally not a person who has batteries in his house, so I might have to go out and buy batteries. But with the PlayStation 5 controller, I can just plug it into my console and then charge it. But yeah, most people say that it would last you like a month or something, but the PlayStation 5 controller would last you only for days. But in my opinion, that generally doesn't matter because I charge other devices at my house too. Why would it take me so long to charge the PlayStation 5, for example? So that was it for this console comparison. If you like this video, then hit the like button and follow me on social media on Instagram and on Twitter. Subscribe to my channel, I would really appreciate that. And with that being said, I'll meet you guys in the next video. Peace.